For coming today. As you all know, we are holding a news conference today to discuss the incident that occurred overnight at the Lynchburg Adult Detention Center. The several individuals will be speaking today, and I have given you all their names. The city manager, Winter Benda, will begin with some opening remarks by greeting you all, and he will be followed by Blue Ridge Regional Jail Authority Administrator Josh Salmon. And then Chief Zudema will speak, and after Chief Zudema speaks, they will take some questions, and after the questions, the city manager will be back to offer some closing remarks. Thank you all.
Good morning. My name is Winter Benda, Lynchburg City Manager. On behalf of the Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members, thank you for coming today. Two people will brief you today: Josh Salmon, Administrator with the Lynchburg Adult Detention Center, and Chief Ryan Zudema, Lynchburg Police Department.
Good morning. Around 6 p.m. yesterday evening, we were informed that a group of inmates in one of our maximum security housing units at the Lynchburg Adult Detention Center had barricaded themselves in that housing unit and essentially taken over that unit. Luckily, the corrections officers working that area were able to get out safely and notified their supervisors as quick as they could. During this incident, the inmates involved in that unit severely damaged property in that unit and basically destroyed a lot of equipment that we had in that individual unit. Once we were informed, we immediately notified Chief Zudema and his staff, who ultimately notified some other resources around the area. At this time, it's a very fresh investigation. We have not been able to dig thoroughly into the investigation. We were just able to quell things a couple of hours ago, so it is very fresh. But we are going to conduct a very thorough investigation along with the other departments that are involved. I'll turn it over to Chief Zudema to give a few more specifics, and we'll take questions after that.
Thank you, Josh. I'm Ryan Zudema, your Chief of Police here at Lynchburg. We were in contact with Administrator Salmon and his staff yesterday evening. We received information of somewhat of an issue at the jail where inmates had taken over one of the pods there. I want to stress first and foremost that at no time was anyone in the general public in any type of threat. There was no threat actively to them or passively. Our goal from the onset of our involvement in this incident was to ensure the safety of both the inmates and the safety of the correctional officers that were working in that facility. And that's the approach we took throughout the duration of this event. This event concluded at roughly 8 a.m. this morning, safely and peacefully. As a part of our cooperation and collaboration that we have with many local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies around the area, once we were able to assess and evaluate what we were dealing with last night, after having all that information provided to us by Administrator Salmon and his staff, I made a decision to contact several of our partners, many of them who are behind me here today. Bedford County Sheriff Mike Miller, Lynchburg Sheriff's Office represented by Chief Deputy Tommy Carter, the Virginia State Police represented by Lieutenant Dave Edwards, the Virginia Department of Corrections Director Harold Clark, who is not able to be here, FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge Neil Matheson from the Richmond Field Office, and U.S. Marshal Tom Foster. In addition to that, we were supported here locally by our fire department, our Department of Emergency Services, our communications and public engagement group, our city manager's office, and public works. I won't get into sharing any of the specific tactics that we used to ultimately resolve this situation for obvious reasons. But I will say we've worked with all of these partners that I've mentioned to you here over many, many different operations over the years, and they are trusted partners of ours and partners that we depend on to successfully and safely resolve situations like this. Last night, it was a period of many hours that obviously it took to bring this to conclusion. But our goal, again, from the beginning was the safety of the inmates, the safety of the correctional officers. And if that took hours or even days to accomplish, we were going to make sure we took the time to do that. Eventually, at the conclusion of this, I'm happy to report that all the inmates were relocated without any incident, without any use of force. And based on what we were dealing with when we initially responded last night, that is a significant accomplishment and one that would not have been possible without the great work of the men and women of the agencies you see behind me here. All involved exercised incredible restraint to de-escalate this situation, and I'm happy to report there were no serious injuries to anyone, corrections officers or inmates throughout this event. Again, this is an excellent example of the collaboration between the LPD and our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, as well as our other city agencies. I'm incredibly proud of the law enforcement officers and everyone that was involved in this incident last night. I think it can be used as an example going forward of how we can take a very trying and difficult situation, resolve it peacefully without any injuries, without any use of force, and ultimately bring some type of calm back to the chaos that was last night. So at this time, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Chief Zudema, how many inmates were involved?
I'd refer that to
There were 66 inmates in the unit.
Were all of those inmates involved in actually barricading it, or were some of them caught up in what was going on?
No, ma'am. As with many instances of this type, there are some inmates that just decide that they aren't going to participate and they kind of back off, observe. But there was a large portion of inmates that were actively involved.
What do you think caused something like this?
You know, that it's early in our investigation, so it's really hard to determine that. You know, we're going to work with all of our member agencies here and try and figure out that cause. We're not exactly sure at this point.
Some people on social media have said that this is resulted from poor living conditions, i.e. Not proper air conditioning, not being fed right. What can you say about that?
Again, we're trying to figure out exactly what the reasoning was behind this. It's early, and we certainly don't want to jump the gun on this. We want to, get all of our reports together and all of our agencies to get all the information that we need to determine that. We're just not sure.
And it was mentioned that there's equipment damages. Is the taxpayer going to have to foot the repair bill for all of that?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure. We have budgeted some room for repairs. We are looking to try and find through camera footage, video footage, who the individuals were, if we can determine and specifically who damaged the property. And if that's the case, then we'll certainly try and get that back from that inmate.
Mr. Salmon, I know we're new into this, as you just mentioned, but have you been getting reports from family members who talk about the conditions, COVID, food, isolation, being on lockdown due to limited staffing? Have you even heard of these claims that we're getting day to day?
Well, I think any administrator in the correctional field is going to tell you that they occasionally get complaints about all of the things that you've mentioned. We have not had an increase or a decrease in those complaints that we know of. That's certainly something that we're going to look into as we proceed with this investigation to see if there are any signs that we could have, used to, quell this before it happened. But, this line of work, we sometimes struggle with staffing, as everyone knows. But as far as complaints, an uptick in any complaints about any of those things, we haven't noticed any.
You say struggle with staffing. Can you be more specific about how many folks you guys need inside?
Our staffing last night during this incident was adequate. This incident did not occur due to lack of staffing. Our staffing levels are much like police departments, sheriff's departments, other correctional agencies in the country. We're understaffed. I couldn't give you a percentage of how understaffed we are right now, but we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Can you describe the housing unit? What is it like in there? What's kind of going on in there?
Well, it's steel and concrete. The individual housing unit that was affected last night has approximately 48 cells, individual cells. Most of those cells were occupied by one inmate. Some were occupied by two. Like we said before, there were 66 inmates and 48 cells. So, but it is a open day room with several tables and chairs. And around the outside on a lower and upper tier, there are individual cells.
3 more questions.
How did, kind of situationally, the COs, were they in this unit at the time and were able to get out, or were they not in when the inmates barricaded themselves?
That's kind of what we're looking into right now. We're not exactly sure if there was a CO inside at the exact time that it began or if the CO was outside of the housing unit, but regardless, when it popped off, so to speak, there were no corrections officers in there.
Early this morning, Mr. Salmon, when we were out there, we could hear communication from family members, friends of those who were inside, talking back and forth. So were some of the inmates in the yard, the rec area, to communicate with people on the outside? They were screaming, and we could hear it on tape.
Yeah, the individual housing unit that was affected, there were no inmates out on the housing or the recreation yard, excuse me.
No idea how that communication was taking place.
No, sir.
1 more question.
When you refer to damage, are you talking about specific items within this unit or damage to the infrastructure of the unit itself?
Specific items mainly. Camera systems were drastically affected. Some of the areas that the officers use to do their daily activities. There was some damage to some cell windows. There was a lot of trash everywhere. So not necessarily the infrastructure, but most of the items that were inside of the housing unit.
Just kind of following up from that, does that mean that this unit will be out of commission for a while, that it won't be able to hold inmates? And if so, do you anticipate how long that will be?
First question, yes, ma'am, it will be out of service, but we do not know how long it'll be out.
And Kristen has the last question.
Is 66 inmates normal? Is it, too much? What is that?
That is very normal, considering the average daily population in any of our jails. 66 in one housing unit is very normal.
Just one quick one. With all that has happened, some people are asking, will they be able to get in the next few days to visit their loved ones? Will clergy be able to get in? That sort of thing. And then secondly, is there any way we could have more access to you, Mr. Salmon, to bring some of these questions and concerns from the community? We haven't been able to get to you here recently.
Well, as of right now, our Lynchburg Adult Detention Center is closed to the public due to the ongoing investigation. We're unable to determine exactly how long that's going to last. But as far as access to me, you know where I work. Come see me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And City Manager Bendel will have closing remarks.
I'm proud of our police department for the professional job they did in handling the incident. I'm impressed by the level of collaboration on the part of the city departments, all of them. I'm very appreciative of all of our law enforcement partners. I'm very thankful that there was a peaceful end for all involved. And again, on behalf of the mayor, vice mayor, and council, thank you for coming today.
Can I take any questions, Mr. City Manager?
No, sir. Thank you.